A few years ago, as a member of the computer committee, I had occasion to go with my committee to Fred's office. And we said, Fred, we've got a problem. The Alpha Micro has had a head crash and we can't get it up. And Fred said, oh, really, what seems to be the problem? Well, there's been too much input and output, I guess. And Fred, with a little twinkling of a glimmer in his eye, said, oh, I see, too much input, output, input, output. I can see how that might cause a head crash. Well, I said, yeah, well, we think the problem is with the hard disk. And Fred says, I see, the problem's with the hard disk. Well, was the machine properly turned on and warmed up? And by this time, we were both loosening our collars a bit. I said, well, yeah, we wouldn't try to interface a hard disk with a cold system. It was properly warmed up all right. And Fred says, well, let me get this straight. You've had a head crash, you can't get it up, there's been too much input and output. Would it be premature to say that your hard disk has gone floppy?
Most of the things Fred said were pretty clear, but one thing that always bothered me was this sort of muddy and fuzzy and woolly statement that I didn't quite understand as a physicist, so I'm going to ask him this one last question. Fred, is this what you mean when you say total revolution?
Let me get this straight, Fred. You really want to go to Superdome College at Crete Hollow, Nebraska. Maybe I got that wrong, Fred. Maybe it's Doan Hollow at Crete, Nebraska. Well, whatever the hell it is, doesn't make any difference. But anyway, Hirsch and I want you to really let out a little shaft on this graduation and give us one of those academe and charisma type of things that you gave us some years ago, and we told you not to bring that stuff down the athletic department.
Fred, is this what you mean when you say total revolution?
The idea for my presentation really came from Dr. Brown himself when he came in here one day and he wanted to know who I most thought he was like amongst the Three Stooges. And so rather than make the decision myself, I'm going to ask you, the audience tonight, to make the decision who is Dr. Brown most like. Okay, and everybody's got to vote, and Floyd Pace, there comes a time in everybody's life when you have to insult somebody, and so tonight's the night we're going to insult Dr. Brown, and so everybody gets to vote. Mary Helen and J.S. and Monty and Ian, you guys all get to vote too. Janet, you know him better than anybody else, and so if you want to vote for all three of the choices, go right on ahead. Okay, now, how many of you think Dr. Brown is most like Curly? Raise your hands. You guys back in row J and K, come on, get those hands up. Remember, everybody's got to vote. How many think most like Curly? And if you don't remember what Curly sounded like, it was kind of, okay? How many of you think he's most like Mo? Mo's probably best known expression may have been, spread out. How many think he's most like Mo? And how many of you think he's most like Larry? Have we done the merit pay evaluations yet? I kind of forgot. Okay, well, never mind. How many think he's most like Larry? Now, since I don't know the results of the vote yet, we'll let the people down at Doan know what they're getting into based on your analysis of Dr. Brown's abilities as one of the Three Stooges.
Revolution.
This comes from several years ago. It was a time when Fred was trying to recapture lost youth by becoming physically fit. He'd started a running program, and so had my wife Diane. Although the two of them never saw very much of each other on their individual runs. They did decide, however, that they would join up as a team to participate in the Ride and Run Around the Lake. It's an event which Storm Lake holds every year on the 4th of July. And they were going to be a team. It's an event which requires that a team of 2 participants and 1 bicycle do a kind of leapfrog business to get their way around the lake, running and riding, for a distance of about 11 miles. As preparation for that, they decided one evening they were going to go out and train. Janet, Fred's wife, and I would haul the bicycles in their van about 3/4 of a mile down the road. They would run that distance, and when they got to us, they'd jump on the bicycles and ride the next half mile or 3/4 of a mile or so, just to kind of practice for their ride and run around the lake. As we were leaving, Jean Tinsley, our neighbor, came out of the house and decided that she was going to run along, and so we were already headed down the street. She dashed back in the house and put her running shoes on and tried to catch up with us. Well, we'd made about 3 exchanges, and Diane and Fred were beginning to show a little bit of the strain of that kind of activity, and on the 3rd exchange, as we were standing there beside the van, Diane smoking a cigarette, Fred breathing heavily, Jean Tinsley ran up, caught up with them, running while they were riding and running. And Fred exclaimed something like, "Gee, Diane, we're almost a 1/3 of the way around the lake." Well, that was the end of that activity, and we celebrated the abandonment of that project by going immediately back to Fred and Janet's house, and we broke out the vodka and tonics.
One thing about Fred, though, that I've never heard anyone else mention is his shoes. When I came here, he was wearing clogs. I suppose that's a leftover from Gustavus and the Norwegians and the Scandinavians up there. Well, he gave those up and went into wearing cowboy boots, I suppose hearkening back to his days in western Nebraska. Well, he dropped those, and now he's wearing penny loafers. Now I wonder, he's going to be president of Doane College. Do we look for wingtips or Gucci shoes? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
I did get a letter from about 14 officials in the Iowa Conference, and they understand that you're leaving, and they said, well, now you're going to have to hire an extra official because all of the last 10 years you've been doing the officiating from that end of the court, and they're really sick and tired of it, Fred, so I thought I'd tell you that.
I've known Dr. Brown so long, I don't know if I can limit it to one anecdote or one story. I've known him for 5 years since he came here from Hastings College, and his background has always impressed me and been quite varied. His experience in career planning and placement at Hastings was useful to me, and I've picked his brain a lot, and his experiences in getting his doctorate at Mississippi State have always been impressive to me. Got to know his wife and children quite well, and his wife Jo is even interviewed with us for a job in financial aid, and her experiences now as a substitute teacher and in education have varied their background quite a bit, and I'm sure have made her a better parent. Obviously, we're going to miss the whole family, and he's been great as Dean of Students here, and I think the improvements that he's helped us with in the residence halls, the carpeting, the renovation, completely changed the whole way I think students have looked at the college here. And as he leaves, I don't know where Dr. Brown plans to head. I assume he'll stay in student services, but I think he'd make an awfully good marriage counselor.
Do we look for wingtips or Gucci shoes? I don't know.
Total revolution.
There's 2 or 3 things I remember about Fred Brown in my short time here. All 3 have had just a tremendous impact on me. I think when we all think of Fred, we think of Fred having 1 or 2 characteristics that are just outstanding. One of those would be organization. If you've ever been in Fred's office, you know that it's highly organized. He keeps everything in its place, and that's been kind of his approach to working with me since I've been at Buena Vista. I remember the first day that I walked in the door, and Fred was there to greet me. I asked him, well, actually he asked me, do you know where your office is? And I said, no, I don't. And he says, well, neither do I. And so we started down Dixon Eilers Hall looking for a place for my office to be. And for those of you who know where my office is now, we have renovated an old storage room in the Associate Dean's office, and that's where I am now housed, and that's part of Fred's organizational ability. The other thing is that in my short time here, I've really appreciated getting to know Fred and his entire family. His son Tom and his wife Pat have been very close friends with the Cloakentagers, and I know as a family we will miss them wherever they may go.
We look for wingtips.
We need a salary review. We need a salary review. Are we in here? Oh. Fred, could we have a salary review before you go? Just a quick, brief one. Listen, Fred, we wish you a lot of luck at Doan's, all of us in the communication, at Doan, in the communication department. I'm going to miss you, Fred. I'm going to miss being called in your office and talking over the latest rumors about me. Fortunately, they've never been true. I'm going to miss that. Well, Fred, we're going to miss you, and that's been the word on campus. We're going to miss Fred Brown. But there's been an addendum to that, Fred. Everybody says, yeah, we're going to miss Fred Brown, but we're not going to miss that damn pipe. But not me, Fred. I loved that pipe. I loved that pipe. I loved that pipe. I loved your can of Coke, Fred. And if I could just drop in for a salary review tomorrow, I think everything would be cool.
Gooshy shoes? I don't know.
Problems with the hard disk.
Total revolution.
A salary review.
Now to my story. This is really embarrassing. I've never told anybody this story before in my life, but I would like to think that I'm responsible for the thin Fred Brown. And must have been about 4 or 5 years ago, I was in the office one day and we were going over some budget figures. I think I'd just become a head of Old Lang and Lid at the time. And he was leaning back and he'd reached over on his desk. If you remember, on his desk he's got that old crappy calculator, that yellow thing there. It hasn't even moved into the computer age with something that's solar powered or battery powered. And he leaned back, and all of a sudden I heard this giant rip. I mean, it was clearly the rip of fabric pulling apart. Now, I don't know whether it was his pants or his jacket that ripped. Now, I was really embarrassed. I wanted to start laughing, but I didn't. I kept my cool. And the next week, Dr. Brown began to get up at 6:30 in the morning and began to swim. So it's clearly the fact that I was in there and he was embarrassed by this rip in his clothes that Dr. Brown became the new, thin Dr. Brown that we all know and love.
I just don't know what to do. I mean, it's like nothing I've ever seen. Fred was down here the other day. We were shooting a little videotape segment thing we were going to send out to the people at Doan, and, well, we knew we had a problem with static electricity. We just never thought it was this bad. I mean, Fred was kind of shuffling around here, and he got a little too close, and zap! I mean, it was like a bolt of lightning. And then suddenly, he appeared on the screens. He's uncontrollable. I mean, you never know what he's going to say. He appears when he wants to, and now, well, we're pretty sure that he's loose in the broadband. We don't know what to do. No. I'm not talking about Fred. I'm talking about Max. Max Fred Room.
Ideas and the pioneering spirit of the foundation of Buena Vista College. A deep and abiding quality of that pioneer spirit is the preservation of liberty. The application of great ideas of freedom, balancing the rights of individuals to seek their opportunity with all other groups. Freedom is not guaranteed. We cannot take our liberty for granted. Each generation has to hold high the banner of freedom, to march liberty forward through the current times, so that our children and our children's children may dream their dreams and seek their opportunities. The freedom to act, to entrepreneur, the freedom to learn, to entrepreneur, the freedom to speak out, to entrepreneur, the freedom to worship, to entrepreneur, so that collectively and individually our nation may prosper now and in the